Greetings everyone, Jeremy Sutton here from PrecisionPrinciple.com on day 22 of the intensive Ashtanga yoga training. Now today I would like to talk about awareness, learning, and teaching. How are they related? What are they? How do they relate to learning? How can we use them to accelerate our own learning? And how are they related? So, in particular, Brian Tracy, in his book Accelerated Learning Techniques, talks about the 4 stages of learning, where at first we are unconsciously incompetent. That is, we don't know what we don't know. We don't know, and we don't even know that we don't know it, right? Then the second stage moves to when we become aware. Through awareness, we become aware of what we don't know, right? So we are aware of what we don't know. Aware but incompetent still, right? Then, on the third stage, we become aware but competent, and that is, we're aware of what we don't know, and we're mindfully practicing, so when we think about it, we can do the techniques. And then finally, on the fourth stage, we become unconsciously competent, which essentially, if you think about the type of learning we talked about with yoga, going from instinct to rational to intuition, this last stage, where we are unconsciously competent, is more like the intuition. That is, we know what we're doing. We don't have to think about it. We can just automatically respond in the way that we desire to respond. We've conditioned ourselves to respond in the way that we have chosen for ourselves, right? This is different than us just responding mindlessly. Or, for example, we all have had certain conditioning in our life. Because we were born somewhere, we have the customs of people who were born in the late 20th and the 21st century. We don't have customs of people who were born in the 16th century, right? That's because our setting conditioned us to act like people from the time that we were born, right? So here we're talking about that is unconsciously conditioned, right? But what we're talking about here with something like yoga is becoming aware that I have maybe unconscious previously to now. And now I start to actively work, with awareness, I actively work on the ways that I can become better. And then ultimately the goal is to intuit, become ingrained so well in the type of reactions that I am moving towards that I am unconsciously competent in these areas, all right? So the point of this is that awareness and noticing play super critical roles in learning anything. Because going from, I don't know, and I don't even know what I don't know, to, oh, I just noticed something. Noticing is the feeling of something passing through the barrier from, it's outside of my awareness, outside of my consciousness, and then whoop, it pops into my consciousness. That is noticing. And then once I've noticed it, now I'm aware of it. That is to say that this thing is now inside my awareness. I can understand, I have a chance to understand how it works because I am now aware of it. When it was outside of my awareness, I had no chance of ever understanding how it worked because I didn't even think about it. I didn't have the tools to consider it, right? So that is one of the reasons why awareness is just so critical. When any time, most problems in the world, there are groups of people who advocate on behalf of these different diseases or different issues in different parts of the world. What are they trying to do? They're trying to raise awareness. Why are they trying to raise awareness? Because as long as something is unknown, as long as we don't even know what's happening, there's nothing that we can do to stop it. There's nothing that we can do. We're basically victims of all the things that are outside of our awareness, right? If something is influencing our lives, but we're completely unaware of it, then we don't have the tools to do anything about it, right? So awareness is the first step to learning. Now, if you recall a couple days ago, we talked about how in yoga, one of the key things that we're doing is adding awareness to the other parts of our body that we tend to go outside of our awareness. And this is important because when we bring greater awareness to the parts of our lives that we tend to overlook, this is the essence of presence. And presence is the essence of what we might call spirituality. And spirituality is a loaded term. I don't really want to get too into it, but we'll just say that the tradition of mindfulness, in the sense that we call meditation a spiritual practice. Why do we call it this, right? Well, it's because it helps us expand our awareness. I would make the argument myself that spirituality is the feeling of being inside of this consciousness as it expands and develops. That is, we all have brains, we all have minds, right? And basically over time, there are two key shifts that happen in our life. One is our model of the universe becomes increasingly comprehensive. It will never become omniscient. We'll never know everything. But as we become aware of more of the details, then our worldview becomes more complete, more closely aligned to the reality that actually is around us, right? So one part of spirituality is a growing awareness in what actually is and how things actually are. A second key component, it seems to be the way that our sense of self can evolve and change over time. That is, children, babies in particular, have such a limited knowledge scope and sense of self that a very small infant is under the impression that the only things that exist are the things that it can perceive directly. You know, that's why peekaboo is so mind-blowing to a small child, because you cover their face and whoop, everything's actually gone. You just made the whole universe disappear, right? But then as soon as you whoop, pull the blanket off with a peekaboo, then all of a sudden, oh my goodness, you just made the entire cosmos reappear, because to that baby, the only things that exist are things that it can see. Now this is a very egocentric perspective of the world, right? So that is to say, Ken Wilber argues in his book, A Theory of Everything, that we all start off as egocentrically as possible. You know? And so if a baby only believes that you or I exist when it can see us, that means that it's under the impression that its perceptions are the cause of the whole cosmos. Now, of course, it's not thinking about this conceptually, but this is the impression, this is the worldview that it's living through. And that's basically as selfish as possible, as self-centered as possible, because this person at such a stage of development is under the impression that you or I can't exist unless it sees you, right? So it's totally self-centered. Over time, our sense of self, obviously, it evolves. In fact, Dr. Robert Keegan from Harvard, an adult developmental psychologist, in his book, The Evolving Self, he outlined how our sense of self changes over time. He didn't connect it to spirituality, but he explained how, essentially, a baby has perceptions. It thinks it is its perceptions, right? And then eventually one day, the baby realizes that it's not its perceptions, and it goes a level deeper. It realizes it is something in here, and it has perceptions. Maybe it's its thoughts. But then we realize that, oh wait, we're not these thoughts. Maybe we are these these feelings behind the thoughts. Or maybe I'm not even these feelings, but I'm an ego that's actually deeper than that still. And maybe I'm not even an ego, but maybe I can be identified with something that's larger than just this same body, right? So the point is that when you talked about most examples given in many spiritual traditions about people who have highly enlightened selves, we might say, one of the key distinctions is that they are identified with bigger and bigger groups, increasingly larger things in themselves. So we might say that if I only care about me, that is a low level of spiritual development. But if when I make the transition from identifying with myself and only things that are about me are good, to my sense of in-group expands to my family, or to my group of friends, or to my school, or to my state, or to my country, anytime we go through one of these expansions of identification, where my identity goes beyond its current limits to something greater than it was previously, the experience of that expansion might be the essence of the spiritual experience. So as our worldview gets increasingly complex, gets increasingly more well-defined, and that kind of expands the boundaries for what we might identify with. Oh, I know all these things exist, but I still identify with myself. And then the experience of being identified with something greater than myself, being identified with my family, with my friends, with my loved one, with maybe the whole world, right? What if we can expand our sense of self beyond the limits of our own country? What if we cared about all humanity? Or what if we even expanded our sense of self and identity beyond just humanity itself and included the animals as our kind of, as Jeremy Rifkin's put it, we identify with them as our fellow sojourners in this journey of life, that we're all kind of in it together. And maybe we can even expand our empathy and identity to the biosphere as the common container that kind of keeps us all, nourishes all of our lives together, right? So the point is that awareness has to be the underlying quality of both learning and of this what we might call spiritual experience. And here we're defining spirituality as my experience of my sense of self expanding, my experience of my worldview becoming more comprehensive and inclusive, right? And some people might argue that, well, how can we say that one type of, how can we say that psychology is developed, right? How can we say that these people are more psychologically developed than other people? Or how can I even say that I am more psychologically developed than I was previously to now, right? And there is a way to be fairly certain that this is the case. And probably the most obvious way is when I expand my awareness in such a way that I can look back at what I thought before, and I can see how I understand why I thought that back then. But I can also see how what I know now is more comprehensive than what I previously knew. Because I can see that my new perspective, it includes all the perceptions of the previous perspective, but also it adds to it. It's like my previous one was A, and my new one is B, and B is A plus 1. That is, B does everything that A can do, and it has an even wider understanding than the previous one. At this point, we can be pretty confident that our new worldview is more inclusive, is more comprehensive than the previous worldview, right? Now, where does this come back to teaching? I said I was going to relate this to teaching, and yoga in particular. Well, in the course that we're doing, it's not just about learning your own practice. It certainly is about that, but we're also working on how to facilitate learning in others, right? And there is basically no faster way to facilitate your own learning than to assist other people in learning as well. And this has been confirmed, and this argument has been made further in a couple of different sources. Brian Tracy's Accelerated Learning Techniques. This book, he talks about how one way to learn more quickly is to, when you're reading material, even if you're not going to ever talk about it, imagine how you would explain it to somebody else who asked you about this book. Because if you can put something in your own words, then you internalize it in a more profound way. You're going to be able to recall it, and because you're also going to be connecting it to more ideas in your own world. Also, another book, Make It Stick, and I'm going to forget the author's names right now, but it's basically the premise of the book is the brain science between increasing your ability to remember and to learn. That's why Make It Stick is in make incoming information stick more profoundly and stay in there better. And one of the many things that they explain is that you have to be able to recall. That is, if you want to be able to remember what you have learned, then you need to practice remembering what you have learned. Right? So things like while you're reading a book, stop every couple pages and then say, what did I just learn in these last couple pages? And then think back and try to answer those questions. And if you can't answer the question about what did I just learn, then you should go back and read it again. Similarly, when doing writing, I usually do writing recalls about things that I've read recently, so that way I can practice my writing by explaining ideas that other people have had before I kind of get into my own writing. And so doing these writing recalls helps cement ideas into my own mind while also giving me the opportunity to practice writing and explaining already elegant ideas in my own words. And this helps me connect the dots and also to kind of internalize the information more profoundly. Back to yoga. So when we're teaching yoga, I'm right now, for example, learning how to make all the adjustments in other students who are in the middle of their practice. And I'm finding personally that this experience of going through and helping other students adjust their posture so they're in the correct posture, the most beneficial posture for them at their level, I'm finding that it's deeply increasing my own awareness in my own practice, right? So this ability to learn, to teach, and help other people expand their awareness has a direct effect on expanding your own awareness in also increasing your general productivity, your general performance in this genre, in this area, which for me is yoga at the moment. So that is, in essence, some of the basic connections between awareness, learning, and teaching. And that is, awareness is the underlying first step to learning anything. You cannot learn anything until you become aware of it. Only once you become aware of it, then can we add more details. And the ongoing process of learning is the ongoing process of becoming more aware of more and more details. That is, you might learn that a certain sport exists, and then you might learn, let's say that sport is baseball for now, then you might learn a little bit about throwing and then catching and batting. And each time you kind of, here's like the area, and each time we're kind of going back over it with more and more details, adding a more refined and nuanced understanding through greater and greater awareness. We keep noticing more finer details about how to do this thing. And these, overall, we start to paint a much more complete, comprehensive, and detailed picture. We might say the same thing as our worldview expands. The more we learn about the world around us, the universe around us, we all have an idea of how the universe works, right? We all have an understanding of how we believe things are. And this model of the universe is in our mind. As we get older and older, the model doesn't necessarily change too frequently, but what does happen is we keep adding more details to the different things that interest us at different times in life. So maybe today I'm interested in yoga, so now I'm going way to the field of yoga and learning about all the different ways that this type of awareness can influence all the different parts of our life. And so essentially, the more that we become aware of, the easier it is for us to learn. And what we've learned in the past is going to influence what we can learn in the future. In particular, if we learn something and then can go teach others about those things, we're going to internalize that knowledge even more deeply, because we're going to be taking another perspective on the topic that we're working on. So awareness, learning, and teaching are intimately tied together. And if you're interested in accelerating your own practice, your development as quickly as possible, I would recommend taking up a position where you are actively teaching others about how it works. Because if you can do that, you will learn more quickly and you will accelerate your practice as well. So for any burgeoning yoga practitioners out there, I would encourage you to stick with the practice, and perhaps even, if you're interested, consider learning how to teach yoga, because it will increase your own practice as well. And also, if you've gleaned insights and benefits from your practice, this is a way that you can contribute to the well-being of other people by sort of passing it on, paying it forward, so to speak. At least that's been my experience so far. And so I hope you've been also gleaning insights from these talks, and I hope that you've been enjoying our time here. In the meantime, if you're interested, go ahead and click subscribe so that you can get updates as they come out. And go ahead and check out precisionprinciple.com, where you can join the game, where you can add a new lens to your own awareness and see how that can increase your well-being and efficiency and effectiveness in so many areas of your life. But in the meantime, keep learning, keep growing, and have a great day.